Good morning, everybody. My name is Alan Reed, Director of Client Projects with Heart Square. I'm delighted to welcome you to our webinar this morning. Today, we're talking about driving member learning and career development from the heart of your membership operation. A thorny topic, talking about the intersection of education and membership, and how to get the best out of both areas of challenge. I'm delighted to welcome our panel today, and I'm just going to ask people to introduce themselves briefly, if I may. Matt, could we hear from you first, if that's all right?
Yep, good morning, everybody. My name is Matt. I'm the head of IT for STEM Learning. I've got a small team underneath me that look after all of the digital systems and IT infrastructure and services that basically drive STEM learning and enable STEM learning to operate. My team's roughly split into two, so we've got 4 or 5 members that deal with kind of break, fix, conventional IT support, and then I've got a team of 3 who deal with all of our digital products, and together we basically make sure that STEM learning has exactly what it needs to deliver its day-to-day operations.
Fantastic, thanks, Matt. And then Steve, please.
So, hello everyone, I'm Steve Seidi. I'm Head of Sales and Marketing at Smart Impact, and we're a software organization that specializes in membership and education and charities. And we worked with STEM Learning on the project that Matt's going to tell you about. Fantastic,
thanks Steve. And then Ahmed, please.
Hi everyone, I'm the founder and director of Smart Impact. I've been working in the membership sector for about 14-15 years now. And I'm from technical background as well, and I'll be happy to take your questions at the end.
Great, thank you very much. So let's get on with the webinar. What we'd like to cover, first of all, is a little bit of webinar etiquette. As you've joined, you're on mute. The panelists will be on mute unless we're actually talking. We've got a Q&A box. A lot of today is to ask about your own project and in the context of the STEM Learning project. So please use the Q&A box, which you'll see as part of Zoom. If you have any technical issues or queries, please drop those in the chat box, and then one of the Heart Square team will assist you. But any questions about your own project, or directed to Matt about how STEM Learning approach their project, or to Smart Impact about what they see in the world of delivering education projects, please drop those into the Q&A. We're not publishing your data. We're treating your data in a very GDPR compliant way. The only thing that will be shared is if you do drop a Q&A question in, then your question will be visible. Heart Square, I'll just say one thing, which is that we specialize in membership and education. It's a big area for us. I've been involved in membership education going back to the 1990s. And then the only other thing I'll say is that we're religiously, fiercely independent of any particular technology or provider. Okay, moving on from there. What we're covering today, we're racing ahead. We've already done the introductions. I'd like to set out the scene of what we are seeing around lots of organizations tackling education in the non-profit sector. Some of what we're seeing is based on our surveys and our research studies that we do with awarding bodies, educating bodies, professional bodies, membership bodies, what they're seeing in terms of meeting the expectations of modern learners, and of course their own ability to do that. We then switch over to an interview where we are going to talk about the STEM Learning project, how STEM Learning went from a position of not being satisfied with what they were offering to their learners and other stakeholders, the journey through the project, and where they are now and what they see next, and then it's over to audience Q&A. So please to drop in your questions as we go through. Okay, so setting the scene, the first part. Essentially, Heart Square, we're typically delivering to something like 30 projects at any one time. We've worked with a couple of hundred professional bodies and educating bodies in recent years. We also do a research study where we invited over 2,000 educating organizations to comment on what their current challenges are. And this is just some of the insights that we got from that. So first of all, there's an expectations challenge that we're seeing in the sector. Going back to 2014, Andrew Hall, who was the AQA chief executive, said that most exams, and in fact most engagements, will be digital and paperless around about 2018, and of course that's not being entirely achieved. We still work with organisations who bundle up care packages of exam scripts and send them out to the British Council in Abu Dhabi. There's still an awful lot of paper involved in learning for a lot of organisations, particularly when it comes to complex exams assessments. At the same time, all of the learners, like ourselves, are modern digital consumers, and we are expecting things to be delivered to us in the same way that we have with everything else in our lives. And if we're not able to get that, then we think less well of our membership body, we think less well of our educating and examining body. So the question that we posed to a couple of thousand organizations is, why is it still so hard in 2021? What we got back is it's not just a technology problem, or it's not even predominantly a technology problem, although technology is a part. So what we got back is that education is often specialized. So there's the world of general CRM, and there's the world of more specialized membership CRM, if you like. But then there's another sub-world of educational engagement points. So everything from marking systems through remote invigilation, through remote e-learning and assessments, all of these things and a dozen others can require specialist tools, which can result in breakouts in data being spread around a number of different systems, and a real challenge in keeping on top and managing all of that. So at the same time as the functionalities and the specialist areas might require specialist and varying tools, all of the students, examiners, other stakeholders are demanding a more joined up, immediate and paperless service. So that's a large part of the challenge. Just to illustrate that, this is the view of the world, let's say, of your director of education, a fairly grumpy person with a lot of responsibility on their shoulders, and that person is managing everything from virtual classrooms through accrediting examiners who could be out on the other side of the world and having various life interruptions that this director of education has to keep on top of. So lots and lots of different engagement points, lots and lots of different ways that specialist functionality can be required. So the challenge there is we're having lots of disconnected points of engagement, and it can end up with the student's view of the world, that your educating body is disconnected. There's still a reliance on paper in some instances, can be seen as old-fashioned, faceless, slow is one of the main complaints that learners quote about their educating body. Why on earth does it take weeks to get exam results? Why on earth does it take, in some cases, months to find out if I passed this or that qualification? So this is the student's view of the world, and there's this huge mismatch between what they think they should be receiving and what they're actually receiving from their educating and membership bodies. So there's obviously a huge challenge there, and the result is that a lot of them are voting with their feet. A lot of them are going off to competitors who can do a little bit of what you do, but more quickly and in a more personalized way. And it's presenting a real challenge to the educating and membership world. So where do we go from here? So there's a segue onto talking about what one particular organization, STEM Learning, has done in the face of all of these challenges, or many of these challenges, and the journey that STEM Learning has gone through. So what I'd like to do is welcome the panel back into the webinar. Matt, if I could start with you, please, if you wouldn't mind giving the audience a little bit of a verbal overview of what the learning offerings are at STEM Learning. What are the kind of things that you have to provide to your various stakeholders, no matter what software or systems or how you're doing it? What is it that you have to provide, please?
Certainly, thanks, Alan. Excuse me. So just a bit of background about STEM Learning. I've been here for about 15 years. I joined shortly after STEM Learning was actually founded. I'm quite used to calling us a small organisation, but actually we've grown significantly in the last few years. So we now have a headcount of about 140 full-time members of staff. We're primarily based in York, in these offices, which I'm in today, but we do have a small kind of satellite office down in London that we run one of our small programmes out of. We're funded by a mix of government, so the Department for Education and the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, alongside charities like the Wellcome Trust and all sorts of employers, large and small, across the organisation, across the country. And ultimately, our goal is to deliver a world-class STEM education for all young people. And we do that through providing a range of CPD development opportunities and resources to teachers and technicians that work in the STEM subjects. So we run, for example, face-to-face residential courses here at the Centre in York. We have an accommodation block just behind me, and we run typically 3 or 4 day residential courses, which might involve exciting practicals in our labs upstairs, or a whole bunch of sessions around different topics that matter to STEM education. We also have a huge network of ambassadors, so volunteers who go into schools and provide role models or talk about their careers and talk about how STEM can actually get them into the careers that they might want to do. And a whole bunch of other programs in between. So this room that I'm in at the minute, because I've had to be in the office today, is actually our resource centre. It's the largest collection of physical teaching resources in the UK. And alongside that, we have an electronic e-library that's got a significant number of resources as well. So we've got a whole bunch of different programs, all of which used to be kind of run individually through Excel spreadsheets and various other things. And that was kind of the driver for us actually getting started with this project. Just putting what we do into some numbers to give you some context, we've got about 500,000 registered website users on our main website. We have 14,000 downloadable resources in our electronic library. They generate over 1 million downloads a year from teachers in the UK. We deliver over 50,000 CPD days of development across our entire network. So we've got the Centre in York, but we also have 75 regional partners that deliver on our behalf. And every year, our 35,000 or so active STEM ambassadors deliver over 600,000 volunteering hours. So it's fair to say we're kind of punching above our weight as an organisation, but all of the digital systems that we have need to basically underpin and support all of the delivery across all of those different programmes.
Great. Thanks, Matt. That's a really helpful overview. And I'm really keen to talk about the project, because a lot of the delegates from the pre-reg questions are in many cases a year or two in your rear view mirror, where they're thinking about embarking on a major technology change or education driven project. In some cases, some people are stuck in the middle and having really dreadful times. So any insights and questions, any insights about your own project will be really helpful. Just for full disclosure for everyone, so Heart Square worked with STEM Learning to help agree the business case and the technology roadmap. You know, what's the best use of STEM Learning's money in order to be the most enabled version of STEM Learning and tackle the technology challenges. And then we worked as client-side project manager for the first stage to the initial go live, working alongside STEM Learning and Smart Impact. So Matt, again, if you don't mind, could you tell the delegates, why did you bother? You know, what were the problems that you were trying to solve? Why go to all of this hassle and all of this expense and disrupt your lives for a year or so? What were the problems you're trying to solve, and what were the drivers for the project, please?
So I mentioned I've been here a while. When I started, there were 26 members of staff. We've now got 140, and for some time that grew kind of gradually, and then in the last few years we've had quite high because we've taken on some really high profile programs. One of the issues we had is that all the systems and the ways that these programs were being managed kind of grew organically with the organization. So we had our e-library, which was a separate digital system, which we had to report on our engagement to teachers. We've got face-to-face CPD, which was run through our kind of main booking system. We've got the STEM Ambassador program, which was delivered on a separate system. We've got various smaller programs like our Infused Partnerships that were literally being run out of spreadsheets. So we had lots of data silos all across the organization. And it was almost impossible for us to get a STEM learning view of everybody that we've engaged with. And as we grew, we need to become more efficient so we can deliver essentially more value back to our funders. So for every pound that we get given, we can deliver significantly more back to those funders. So it became clear that we needed to join all of that stuff up and be able to look from a STEM learning point of view and come across as a joined up organization. So getting rid of all of those silos, giving the organization one central view of everything we're doing from an engagement point of view, how we're working with schools, how we're working with teachers, where teachers and schools are in terms of working their way through the offer that we've got. It just wasn't possible.
Absolutely.
Additionally, we've got we had a booking system that was running our CPD enrolment, and that was coming towards end of life. It was starting to creak at the seams a little bit. We knew that would need replacing, so we were looking at how we might do that alongside bringing the rest of STEM learning into one kind of unified view. And kind of alongside that, the operation elements, like the marketing team had their own systems that they pulled data into, and then they'd email and use that tool for communications. But all of that transfer of data was happening through Excel spreadsheets. Pull one down here, copy it across, upload it up to the new system. And it was just taking a lot of time. There was a lot of mistakes happening. And we just didn't have a way of kind of working coherently as one organization rather than a set of individual programs.
Fantastic.
And kind of finally, we were bidding for a program called the National Centre for Computing Education, which we were successful in winning in 2018. And we knew that in order to deliver that effectively and deliver value back to the DFE, we'd need to have this kind of unified system in place to help us move forward.
That's really interesting, and really a lot of really common challenges with the audience there. So if I could summarize it to segue to my next question, there were about at least 10 major areas of problems that you listed there, and a really common challenge that the audience are having is, where do I start? Because I've got problems in all of these different areas. And I know that if I pull a thread, it's like pulling a thread on a jumper. It's going to bunch up under my arm and bunch the collar. So all of these things are connected, but where do I start? How much money do I need? How do I get the organization to agree a way forward? So how did you tackle that first non-technology issue, of getting agreement and alignment on budgets, and where on earth do you start, and what do you include and what do you not include?
Unusually for us on this project, getting agreement and getting the senior buy-in and ultimately getting it funded wasn't very difficult. We were pretty much pushing at an open door. I wish all of our projects were like that, but sadly they're not. We did go through the business case process, but every department head was getting frustrated at the lack of visibility. Our executive team couldn't see what we were doing as a business. They could only see what individual programs were doing. So the need to change was really clear. So we did put a business case together. As you mentioned, Alan, we worked with Heart Square to kind of put that together. But it was literally pushing an open door in terms of getting the funding. Where do you start? That's the tricky bit. And so we did start by pulling a trusted partner on board in the form of Heart Square and getting their knowledge to kind of help us decide where to start. But ultimately, we came up with a plan that was split into 4 different phases that would see us consolidating a number of tools, delivering additional visibility into what we're doing, and then replacing some legacy systems that needed replacing. As it happens, that roadmap got completely flipped on its head when we were successful for the National Centre for Computing Education bid, because we needed to replace our booking system first, which was originally going to be the kind of final part of the jigsaw. But in order to scale out to the doubling the size of our regional network, we needed something that could work for us a lot sooner. So we flipped that roadmap on its head, essentially. But when you're talking to stakeholders, it's really tricky because everybody's got their own problems. Everybody is really keen to get their bit done first. And ultimately, you need to just sit down, work out what every department is struggling with, work out what they need, and then take that back to a more senior level and just prioritize it as a business, which is kind of what we did. As I say, we did flip it on its head before we started delivering it and delivered the bits we were planning on delivering actually first. But it's really just finding out where the key pinch points are in the organization, and then as a senior leadership team, prioritizing those, because you can't do everything at once. If you do, you'll get nowhere basically. So you need to start with some actual deliverables that can bring the rest of the organization on board, and they can start to realize, you know, how much value you are delivering back to them.
Great, thank you. And so at this stage, you've agreed what you're going to do. You know, this is where we're going to start, and this is what the next couple of years looks like. You've agreed how much money is required, and that's been approved. You're now in this terrifying position of, okay, Matt, you've now got a load of money to spend. If you muck it up, it's your fault. And then the next thing is, of course, going to market for technology partners in your case, and that's fairly commonly the next step. Could you describe a little bit about the vendor selection process that ultimately ended up you ended up with a Dynamics provider in Smart Impact for your main CRM and education provision? Could you talk to us a little bit about that process, and what was it that you were looking for in a technology partner to differentiate quite a crowded marketplace?
Sure. So I think the word panic is probably a really good one. So, you know, we've got the approval, we've got the budget, we've got a timeline that we need to get something done in. It's like, okay, this is quite real now. We actually need to get it done. At the time, and probably still, we didn't have the internal expertise to run that project ourselves from a technical point of view, from a kind of business platform point of view. So we knew that we needed to get somebody on board to partner with to help us through that statement of works, through the tendering process, and ultimately getting a technology partner on board, which is when we approached Hart Square and a couple of other people who have got that knowledge, and as Alan has mentioned, are fiercely independent, but they do bring with them a number of kind of friends and family that they can talk to in the form of Hart's Smart Impact and others. So we partnered with Hart Square in this instance and used your knowledge basically to help us build a statement of works, work out what the initial deliverables would be, what order we might do that in, and then write that tender document and ultimately go out to tender to people that you've worked with before, but also a couple that we'd had recommendations with personally. And our tendering process essentially went along the usual formal route. It was quite a high value project, so we had a number of kind of legislative things we needed to go through. But a key part for us was actually pulling those suppliers in and understanding what drives them. So what do they want to get out of this relationship other than just some income? Because if you're looking to get a long-term partnership, which you really need to do for any of these projects, you know, you're not just delivering something and then moving on. It's ultimately a long-term partnership that you're moving into. You need to make sure that the organization you're partnering with has a reason for doing this other than just pound signs, basically. Otherwise, they'll never be aligned to what your goals are, and you'll ultimately not have as much success. And so, yeah, the tendering process and actually meeting the teams and talking through with the people that would actually be delivering the project rather than just a kind of sales and marketing team was really important to us.
Absolutely. And so we then have the team assembled. So there's the vendor selection process. Smart Impact ultimately gets selected as the preferred supplier and confirmed partner. Could I then bring Steve and Ahmed into this? So some of the questions that we've had from people as part of our research are people asking, what does it take to be a good customer? Actually, that's a surprisingly rare question, but an important one. So what do you find important in terms of Smart Impact in establishing a project with a customer so that there aren't going to be arguments later? People are not going to be misunderstanding each other later. Could I just get your comments on that, please?
Sure. I mean, like, as you definitely know, Alan, these projects are challenging projects. You know, they are never straightforward, and it takes partnership to deliver this kind of projects. So one of the key things that we look for when we go and demo our system or participate in a tender is, can we work with this customer? Do they understand that challenge? Do they understand that this is not a software that we are gonna get the CD and install it and it works? It's not like that. It's a business partnership, and as Matt mentioned, it's long-term relationship. So does the client understand this? If yes, then this is definitely the first thing we look at. The second thing we look at is definitely the resourcing of such projects, because again, it needs two sides to deliver such projects. And with STEM in particular, we were definitely very excited in the beginning, and as Matt mentioned, we were not looking only for the money. It was the reputation of the organization, the challenge of the project, and deliver it in very short time. And that was the main challenge. We started the project, I think, in February or March, something like this, and the delivery has to be done before the academic year in September. So to deliver a project in such short time frame, you need the client to understand the challenge, and it was perfect with STEM and the team there. And of course, it's like, sometimes it can be a bit like pressure, and everyone is under pressure, but everyone understood the challenge, and we managed to deliver the project on time and on budget.
And Matt, so thank you, Ahmed. Matt, what was the for the delegates who don't know, what was the scope of that first phase? Sometimes called the MVP, sometimes the initial go live, etc. What were you trying to cram into that that period before the academic year, when tens of thousands of people will be rushing at you trying to do something?
So that first phase was essentially to replace our aging booking system, which handles all of our CPD bookings for face-to-face and online CPD bookings across our whole UK network, which as a standalone project would probably not have been as stressful as this one was, but that platform integrates into at least 4 other key systems for us. So we have an impact tool that we use to measure impact across our entire program, which participants that are coming through a CPD journey with us actually get entered into that impact system, and then their kind of progress through CPD is monitored, and they're asked to look at what the impact of this CPD is going to be. So it's a key system that's driven by our booking system. The minute you actually book onto a course, you get enrolled into this impact journey. Likewise, our course catalog is actually through our website, so we're not using Dynamics as our course catalog. That is delivered through a separate website, and there's a huge amount of integration needed to happen with that system. We also have a data warehouse and a few other bits and bobs. So as a standalone project, it was quite a challenge, but it was an even bigger challenge by these additional services that needed to be bolted on to make the whole journey work basically for users.
Yes, that's a huge amount to do in a short period of time. And Matt, could you describe how you resource, or how the project was managed at STEM Learning in terms of the governance of STEM Learning, the relationship with Smart Impact, managing business as usual as an organization as well? How did that structure work, and how much of your lives did it consume?
I mean, we've learned from the past that you need to make sure you resource these projects internally, especially something that's so mission critical. And because this project spanned a number of different STEM learning departments, we actually built a project team that encompassed pretty much every department in our organization. And we made it really clear to the heads of those departments that we would need a significant amount of time from the individual that was representing them. So we actually started the project off with a really, really strong project team that had, I think it was about 7 or 8 full-time people, including Harriet from Heart Square. And they stuck with that project all the way through. So getting that team on board, understanding what they would need to deliver and how much resource they would need to put into that was really important. And then at the start, we made sure we got the Smart Impact team on site. And indeed, we went to London, they came up here just so that everybody could get to know each other on that team, so we could really start to build the relationships.
Those were the days.
Well, yes, quite. Yeah, it's not so easy these days, but yes. So I think ultimately just building that relationship between the 2 organizations so that everybody felt like they could just talk to their counterparts or raise any issues in a fairly safe environment.
Great. So also, I can see we're getting some Q&A questions dropping in, some really good ones about People's Own project. So please do remember to drop in any questions you want for Matt or anyone else on the project team. So Matt, that's really interesting. So could I ask, from the Smart Impact point of view, what did you find to be the main challenges on the project? Matt's already mentioned time constraints, really tough time constraints. Could you expand on that as well then, please?
Yeah, I mean, like, these projects, as I said, it's partnership, and of course, everyone, within the client, they have their day job. So you can't, well, we can put people full-time on the project. You can't ask all the stakeholders at STEM to be full-time as well. So this is why these projects take time. And usually it is between 6 to 9 months, this kind of projects. But the challenge was the time. Definitely, we had a hard deadline. We had all to deliver to that timeline, and considering the summer holidays at that time, people were, they were traveling. So to deliver it, on time, that was the main challenge. And in addition to this, technically, I think the data quality as well. Most of the data that we dealt with, it was kind of like online registration. So our team had to do a lot of work around this to deliver it. And these were the main 2 points. And in addition as well, STEM is a special organization where we delivered course management systems to many of our clients. The structure of courses and the pricing of these courses, for STEM was definitely unique, and this is basically because of the the funding they are getting from different funders, and the focus areas within the country where the government, for example, they want to encourage STEM education. So they had their unique pricing model as well. So all of these you can consider challenges within that time frame.
And I think just picking up on that, pricing is definitely something that is quite unique to STEM learning. We have all sorts of slightly crazy pricing logic where participants will be given a price based on their previous attendance, or the school that they're linked with, or their status as a newly qualified teacher, or indeed how many other people from their organization might have been on a course in a particular program in the past. So there's some significant challenges there. But I think a further pressure on the timeline was that we weren't just working to deliver this one system. As I say, that we had these integration points. So we had at least 3 other third-party suppliers that were waiting for a certain level of functionality before they could then go on and deliver their bit. And as a holistic project, we needed it to be delivered by September, essentially. So it basically just put a lot more pressure on the Smart Impact team, and in turn, the internal project team, because we had other third parties that were basically saying, okay, we need this now. We've got to this particular deadline. We can't have any slippage. We need this, otherwise the whole project will slip. So there really was a huge amount of pressure on timelines. And I think it's fair to say that the relationships were tested at points during the project.
And if I can just continue on that, I think Matt said there was a large element of panic, and I think we would view it as a large element of enthusiasm. And that was one of the challenges as well, because the time scale was very short to do a lot. Plus there was the contract that had to be fulfilled, so the system had to be in place. It was a drop dead date. So we had to sort of channel a lot of that enthusiasm and reduce that panic as much as we could. And a lot of what we tried to do there was around the fact that we've delivered lots of different training, course management and CPD systems to lots of organizations, so we could show them things and say, look, this can happen. So how do we tune it for what you need, rather than let's try and imagine what a solution would look like. So that helped us focus it and start the project very fast, very early, as soon as we'd agreed to go with it. And that's what helped us hit the timescale overall, because we could start quickly.
And just building on that, Steve, how much of what STEM learning we're trying to do was weird, unique to STEM learning, and how much of it is relatively common challenges of anyone trying to modernize their education delivery?
I think I'll give a high view, and then Ahmed, you can probably add some more detail. But I think most projects have the same overall challenges, which is around getting executive buy-in, getting the team buy-in and getting them focused, getting your data sorted, because it always is messier than you think and it always starts too late, and then keeping focus on what the key points of the system are. So those are very generic points, but a lot of organizations get too involved in the detail on that particular thing. You then get some specific areas. So we mentioned in STEM, data was one, and they had a complex pricing model. But if you can choose the right suppliers, they may well already have flexible systems that can adopt and change to support, say, different pricing systems or more complex exam structures or different departmental organizations and so on. So I think that those are STEM suffered from generic issues, and the key one again was timescale. But then there are a couple of specific things which you can get round by choosing the right suppliers as well, I think. I don't know, Ahmed, if you want to add to any of that.
Yeah, I'm going to add a bit about the functionality. As we mentioned, the pricing model, for example, is unique for STEM, and also the reporting, especially to the Department for Education, is absolutely unique. We wanted, or we needed, our team to pick up the terminology and understand the required reporting in very short time. Things like when we say unique participant in the course, what do we mean by that? And stuff like that, like special terminology for the Department for Education. We had to learn it quickly and deliver based on that.
Great, thank you. And then back to Matt then, please. I guess for people who are setting out on this journey, and in that slightly terrifying position of worrying about getting shouted at later, how would you describe it? And what's the perception from a STEM learning point of view? What does STEM learning think went well on the project, and what went less well that other people might be able to learn from, even though you had to go through it the hard way?
Sure. So firstly, sorry, I just dropped off because my laptop decided to go to sleep. So apologies if I missed something that Ahmed and Steve were saying. I mean, overall, the project went well. So we signed a statement of works with Hart Square to help us with this project in October 2018. We went through the whole tendering process and appointed Smart Impact as our technology partner towards the start of September 2019. No, sorry, we delivered the project in 2019, talking rubbish. And we got Smart Impact on board in February of 2019. So it was a really compressed timeline. But ultimately, the whole thing went live with the integration with our impact system and our website and our data warehouse and everything else 9 days later than we'd planned. So we had a hard stop of I think it was the 1st of September, and it went live on the 10th. So I think that is a huge success. And I'm here on this webinar talking to you guys, so we're obviously still happy with where we are. The project saw the migration of data from our old system, which Ahmed's already mentioned wasn't in great shape, and I think that was definitely one of the areas that didn't go quite so well. I think we probably all underestimated the complexity and the nature of that data, but also the complexity of some of our fee models in other areas. The key thing for us really was getting this whole thing delivered through a really, really positive project team. And as I say, 9 days late, and I think it was within about 6% of budget. So it was really, really impressive how everybody did work together to pull it out of the bag. I think the key points were just getting those parallel streams of work. So having the data migration running alongside all of the actual development of the system really helped. It meant that we had several bites of the cherry to actually get the data migration right, and running those there's almost 2 independent streams of work that obviously were codependent, but we kind of been run separately and resourced separately. So yeah, I mean, it was a really, really positive project. It had some fraught points during the middle of it, as the deadlines were looming and our integration partners were struggling to get started. But I think, yeah, overall, we'd see the whole thing as a massive success, and it's really helped STEM learning bring all of its different programs together in the months that have followed.
Great, thank you. I'm really keen to get to the Q&A questions because we've got some really good ones dropping in. So could I just ask you, and actually a lot of the Q&A questions are coming through for Smart Impact as well as STEM. So Matt, could I ask, so you delivered, the big change that might have been years in the making, years in the run up of people saying, oh, we need to improve this, we need to improve that. And then you did it all in this huge push. So having achieved that, you either get to collapse in a heap, you know, and draw breath for a year or two, or you get to do your next things. So which is it to be? What's happening at STEM Learning?
Yeah, so I think what I would say as well on a personal note, try not to coincide a huge project like this with you having a new baby, because that just adds pressure that nobody really needs. But yeah, since then, we've essentially built on the platform that we've got. We've brought some of our smaller programs on board. So things like our Infused Partnerships are now being run out of Dynamics. As an organization, we launched a new STEM community, which is going to be the place for any teachers teaching in STEM subjects in the UK to go, to get advice, to be able to engage directly with our education experts, and to be signposted either by ourselves or by the community into the resources and the kind of the advice they need to basically deliver better lessons. That launched just before Christmas in a beta phase and officially launched on Monday, and we've already got several hundred members. So that's another big part of our strategy moving forward, to become this kind of the go-to STEM community for UK teachers. On top of that, we are looking at taking our main website, which is now 5-6 years old, and splitting that into individual components. So rather than just one big website built on a big web application, we're going to split it into smaller pieces that allow us to be a lot more agile. And those pieces will be interacting a lot more closely with Dynamics moving forward. And then the ultimate goal is to pick up the second and third phases from the original project and get things like our marketing system, which is a separate CRM, and a separate smaller CRM that a different department are using, and just bring all of those into Dynamics over the next 18 to 24 months, so that we're really leveraging the efficiency and the cost savings of having Dynamics as a business platform. So no, we're not taking a break.
No one's put a Baco foil cape around you and handed you a Mars bar and said you can take a year off. Fantastic.
Totally not.
And it all kind of makes sense. And also, having delivered the main challenging project, the one that could have ended up with people shouting at each other, it then helps build up credibility, doesn't it, within STEM learning of how projects can be approached. And then when you say we'd like to do a thing, it tends to get tends to be believed, and you get that backing. That's really, really interesting. Thank you. I'm really keen to get to the Q&A questions. So Joyce, do you mind? So I'm going to introduce my colleague Joyce Harmon from Hart Square. If you don't mind moderating and reading out the questions to the panel, I'll be very grateful, please.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Alan. Yeah, we've had quite a lot of questions, some which we've covered slightly, so some I might join together. One of the first question was about resourcing, and as you said, Matt, about maybe not planning around babies and things like that. But how did you resource your side of the project, as well as carrying out business as usual?
That was definitely one of the challenges, and we were very clear up front that we needed to get a certain amount of time from all of the key departments, and we built that project team from representatives across all of key departments in STEM learning. So there was, as I say, 7 or 8 members, and we basically made sure that they could devote probably 0.5, 0.6 of their full-time hours to this project. So it was a significant resource on our side to make sure that it did actually fit in and work across all the departments that we needed it to work. And then obviously bringing Hart Square in and having Harriet as a dedicated PM and coordinator was absolutely critical, and a really, really key part of the team.
Perfect, thank you. And a question around member expectations. Sort of, were there any communications done around this before about what you were going to be doing? Which also kind of, as well, I think ties into another question, which probably Stephen Ahmed would want to cover, is looking around how the systems can help organisations like STEM put CPD and education at the centre of stakeholder management. So just sort of wonder thoughts on that, on member expectations and how the systems can enable you.
Yeah, so for us, we're using Dynamics as more of a back-end system, and at the minute, all of our members and service users interact with different systems that are driven by Dynamics. So the communication essentially was just to say that certain systems will be down as we did the cutover from our old booking system to our new Dynamics platform. It was really around delivering internally and making sure the messaging to our partners. We've got a network of 75 regional partners that deliver on our behalf. So negotiating with those and getting their feedback and making sure that they're in the loop all the way through the project.
Perfect, thank you. And Steve or Emma, did you want to comment about how systems like this can help organizations like STEM?
I mean, it definitely gives you the the core functionality that can allow you to serve your members better. It depends, of course, on the roadmap for each organization. Some organizations, they want to move very fast and give all what they can to their members quickly, and some they put a plan, as like STEM, for example, they started with one stage and they're gonna move slowly to fully utilize the functionality of Microsoft Dynamics. But I think having a system like this, and especially for example, I think Matt didn't mention this, but the move from face-to-face courses, suddenly there is a lockdown and everyone has to work from home, and all the courses they provide, they have to switch to online learning. So having a back-end system that is a modern system and is fully integrated with the front end or the e-learning platform they're using, I'm sure this helped with the transition. So to have a modern system that can escalate and can expand, depending on the circumstances, is one of the key things of Microsoft Dynamics, and one of the key functionality that we believe we deliver to STEM.
Definitely. And just picking up on that point, I mean, when lockdown happened on the 23rd of March, we shifted the vast majority of our face-to-face courses into an online remotely delivered model. And we were pretty much up and running with a whole remote offer within about 10 days. And a really important part of that from a business function point of view was being able to actually track the attributes about remote delivery, track how they're being delivered, track how a member or participant would access those activities, and being able to quickly get that functionality through Dynamics was really important to us.
Great. And Matt, another question for you. Did the project encourage change or improve the way people do their jobs, or did people resist?
Both. So we love a spreadsheet within STEM learning, and I'm on a kind of, well, actually, it's not a one-man mission anymore. We've got quite a following to get Excel out of all of our business processes because it just creates data silos. But on the whole, most of the teams were really keen on getting their programs or their processes into Dynamics. We kind of had the opposite issue in that our scope was, to deliver these things, but everybody else wanted to be part of the project. So it was kind of keeping people back from it and then allowing them to deliver the MVP and then kind of onboard new programs and processes afterwards. So yeah, we kind of had the opposite issue, but ever since we have launched, obviously there have been teething issues, as you'd expect from any complex system that's managing complex business processes. But we have hugely improved the efficiency of how we work and how we can actually see how we're engaging with our audience.
Perfect. And I think I was going to say a good follow-on question that's just come in as well around that is, and a question I think for all of you is, how far should a good supplier go to do what you ask versus helping you to rethink and restructure the project and phasing? I know it's a question that comes up a lot. So, I suppose, Matt, how much do you think Smart Impact should have pushed you or did push you, and equally, for Steve and Ahmed, how important do you think it is that, you just do what the client wants versus, questioning and challenging and bringing new ideas? I don't know who wants to comment first.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely a topic that came up a number of times through the project. We had a certain number of things that we have done in a certain way for a long time, and there's arguably legacy reasons as to why we've done that. And I think we got a reasonable balance between actually leveraging a better way of doing it with a new product, and also keeping some of the legacy stuff that we needed so that we could, actually see the project complete with the integration to various other systems as well. So there were some things we couldn't easily change, but there were some things that we did get pushback from Smart Impact on, and ultimately changed the way that we work to better fit a system and ultimately save on complexity and save on bespoke development.
Yeah, and I think that's very true. This is one of the key areas that a good supplier should bring. So for too long, I think a lot of computer system suppliers have just done what customers ask, and so you can embed old practice and just make it a lot faster. So we try very much to bring a lot of friendly challenge to why do you do things like this. And we quite often say, well, we quite often hear, well, we've always done it that way, so we want to carry on doing it the way. And we have, for instance, in one organization, we've had places where they've done the same thing slightly differently. I think it was 10 different ways in different departments. So we can get that process down to one, and it just becomes a lot more efficient and a lot more easy to maintain for us as well. So there's a lot of key advice that we can bring, and we give a lot of examples of where other organizations have done similar things, and maybe this will work for you, or maybe it won't work for you. So we don't just do what we're asked. We think it's important to try and get people to understand the art of the possible that new systems can bring them, because there are a lot of advantages new technology can bring over what you've got, especially as it's integrated. And it's our job to bring that to life for our customers, because they can't always imagine that.
Perfect, thank you. And one of the questions was, what would you do differently next time? And I to be honest, I think that question's valid for all parties, really. But maybe Matt, do you want to start?
I'd love a bit more time to do it, but that's not always possible. What would we do differently? I think, yeah, probably just making sure that upfront everybody was aware of the complexity. We've talked about complexity a few times this morning, and I think that was probably one of the key things that could have derailed the project. You know, it caused some tension along the way, and it was probably the biggest cause of friction that we had as a project team. But I think just making sure that that complexity was fully understood by everyone that we're working with, because internally we knew how complex we are, and we'd kind of said, oh, well, this is a complex area and this is a complex area. But I think because we are fairly unique in some of those things, there was probably a view that, you know, everybody thinks they're complex, but actually we were in a number of areas. So really just reinforcing that.
Perfect, thank you. One of the questions, sort of tying some questions together, very much around understanding, you know, your members' learning requirements and putting together a strategy around this, which also follows on to a question about understanding what the budget was to do this. I don't know if you want to comment on the budget or not, but really how, you know, what was the best way to understand what the requirements were, and you know, the budget that was required so you could get the sign off in order to be able to do this?
Yeah, so the problems that we were addressing were essentially giving STEM learning a better view of its members and its member engagement, so that we can then help them to understand, you know, if somebody else has done this, they've then gone on to do that, and it's had this impact. So we could say to somebody, well, somebody else in your shoes at a similar school teaching a similar subject has done X, Y, Z, and the impact has been this. And we can see that you've done this, and so you might want to go on and do something else, essentially. We didn't have that visibility before. So whilst it wasn't directly impacting the kind of members' journey, it was giving us the ability to steer their journey in a particular direction. In terms of the budget, I won't go into specific details, but you know, we do understand the importance of efficient digital infrastructure. So we did resource the project you know, to a level that was appropriate. Interestingly, we kind of had a budget that we had to work to before we even knew what our requirements were. So it was a case of, you know, there's a certain amount of money that we've got as a limit, and we need to make sure that we work within that that remit, basically.
I guess it's worth saying that so we do a lot of business case and technology roadmap projects, and it's always a lot of money as far as boards of trustees are concerned. It's usually a surprisingly high sum of money, and in some cases we're proposing multiples. One organization said we had an idea in our head, and then you came back with the real cost of the going rate to do the kind of things we wanted to do, and it was 7 times more than we had in our heads before we started, before you put out the numbers, put out the real numbers. So it's always a high amount of money. The challenge tends to be getting boards of trustees and finance committees to understand what the appropriate spend is. Once they understand what the appropriate spend is for that organization, then they're happy. They tend to be happy to go along with it, as long as the money's physically there, and then it has to be cut to fit for the ambitions of the organisation, obviously. But yes, it's getting that budget approved tends to be a harder job than you've described, Steve. Sorry, Matt, at STEM Learning. You had, as you said, you're pushing on an open door to some extent. With many organisations, it takes an awful lot of replaying the roadmap and replaying the benefits, etc., to get that costing element, get everyone on board with the costs and the scope of the project. So, sorry, Joyce, do you want to carry on with the Q&A questions?
I just add to that, Alan, that I think,
Please.
sorry, Joyce, that you know, a key thing that we did that we worked with yourselves to do was actually look at what money we will save as well by doing this, so that you've got this big upfront, you know, this is how much we need to spend to get this done, but actually in the first year and the subsequent years, we will actually have these real direct financial savings. And if you can, and this is usually quite difficult, try and look at the total cost of ownership and what you will gain in non-direct costs as well. So opportunity costs that you might miss if you haven't done this project, and they're obviously a lot harder to try and put numbers against, but all of that offsets the initial, you know, this is how much we want to spend.
Yeah, just from our side to comment on the budget as well. You know, it was a fixed cost project. So while it was an open door, but it was an open budget. So it was a fixed cost project, and that was one of the challenges as well that we had during the project. We had a specific time frame, a specific budget, and we came across a lot of challenges. You know, throughout the 6 months of the you know, project time, and we had to manage everything together just to meet the deadline. So it definitely, you know, having a flexible budget helps, but we understand that not all of the clients will be able to go through this. So we offer the fixed cost model as well to make sure that, you know, our clients have peace of mind when it comes to the budget.
Great, thank you. So yeah, let's carry on with the Q&A. I see we've got another bunch of questions dropped in, and we've only got a few more minutes. So Joyce, if you don't mind.
Yes, just I suppose one is an easy, quick question for you, Matt, is did you need or have a dedicated project manager working on the project?
Yep, and we used Harriet from Heart Square for that. So we actually had Heart Square act as our external PMs essentially. But Harriet was completely embedded within the project team. She spent a couple of days a week up in York, and she was, for all intents and purposes, you know, other than IR35, a member of staff. So yeah, that was really key for us. That really did add a huge amount to the project team, and ultimately made the project a success.
Perfect, thank you.
If I can pick that up from our side as well, I think it's absolutely crucial to have a really good project manager on the customer side. It makes a massive difference. So if you don't have people internally in your organizations, then by all means go out and find externals like Matt did. It really means that you've got a lot more understanding, and also it keeps everyone honest, if you like. It keeps the suppliers honest, and it keeps the internal teams honest, and it means that there's a lot of more sort of fluidity around, so that you can basically make things happen a lot smoother. Perfect.
Yes, Steve, completely agree. One last question. I'm conscious of time. I'm kind of tying a few together. Looking at, you know, should we look at new or different technologies to deliver training and learning, or can we use what we have? Equally adding question, what different systems are out there? I suppose it's really more a question for yourself, Steve or Ahmed. You know, people often think that, you know, they can't do anything with what they have. You know, what's your view? What can they build on what's out there, or is it always a starting from scratch?
Not necessarily, no. So it depends on what they have. So if they have, like, you know, good e-learning system, for example, then we can integrate with that one. We don't need to ask for replacement or you know, offering something different. If you know, the website is just like a more recent website and it delivers the functionality that is needed, all what we do is integrate with that website rather than suggesting to replace everything. So it depends on you know, it's case by case basis really, and it depends on the technology that is being used. Is it modern? Is it gonna meet the objectives of each organization? If it does, then we are happy to integrate with or use what is in there. If not, obviously, as a consultant and advisor, we advise to replace.
Yeah, and I think just to take that from other angles, a lot of people think tools like Dynamics can do everything, and they probably can, but that doesn't mean that they should. So we've got modules that can do CPD and exam management and training courses and events and so on, but there are lots of other good systems that can do that sometimes much more personally to what customers want. So we do a lot of our projects are integration. We don't expect to replace everything. And we deliberately don't have functionality in some areas like, I don't know, forums management and discussion groups. We would use other tools such as HireLogic or something like that. So integration's key, and in the way that Matt explained they use Dynamics more as a sort of back office hub, an integration tool. And in membership organizations, it's much more front office, but still can act as that hub. So as long as it's got the right information in it, then it can still provide the right training and the right CPD to the right contacts that you've got and help you in the marketing of that as well, because it's all integrated. So by all means, keep what you've got if it's good, and we can help you decide that.
Great.
Thanks a lot. I think that's a really important point. Sorry, Alan, one sec.
Sure.
You can probably get Dynamics or another system to do everything you want, but you probably don't want to. And I think it's a really good question if you are talking to a future supplier. If they're really keen on the system that they're pushing should do everything, then I'd probably question whether they're the right organization. Steve has just openly said that we would partner with somebody else. We wouldn't try to do this. And that for me is the sort of response I'd want from a long-term partner, somebody that's not afraid to try and go out and help you work with best of breed, rather than just trying to shoehorn whatever your functionality is into the solution that they've got.
That's a really important point, and thanks a lot, Matt and Steve, for that. So great. I wanted to thank everybody for coming to our webinar today. I really want to thank Matt, Steve, and Ahmed for joining us on the panel. I think there were some great insights and answers. I hope will help people in the audience. So we'll send a follow-up today, and of course we're happy to carry on the conversation and to channel follow-up questions to Matt, Steve, and Ahmed as well. So, and the final thing I'd like to say is congratulations to STEM Learning, who I don't want to sound overly oily, but I think you've tackled a tremendously complex series of challenges and come up with a really astonishing result in a really narrow frame of time. So congratulations, really well done to STEM Learning. And thanks very much to everybody for joining the webinar today. Hope to see you on our next webinar next week. Thanks for your time, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.